sent out to those seniors about this master plan. There was an email sent out to the master plan committee to ask them that it should have a bigger place, that everybody should have a seat. But obviously they didn't think it's important enough that every single one in the room should have a place where to see. The room is already filled and the time is not here. If you realize there's no Orthodox Jews in this room, there's a reason for that. Because they made sure that, I don't know how you guys found out about this meeting. I only found out about it from an Oprah request. So none of the Orthodox papers had any advertisement about this meeting. There's a lot of Orthodox people in this town that are same upset at you or what's going on. They were not notified to come over here and to join. So hopefully there will be enough space because you don't have any Orthodox over here. You will have some of them in the back of the room that they'll catch and harass you. Hopefully the police department will do their job. These are the developers that are greedy. But in general, the population of Lakewood doesn't even know that there's such a thing as a master plan. Because none of their papers advertised it to the master plan committee didn't feel it's important enough to let the population know of Lakewood. So obviously we have only one group over here, and we should have had all groups of town. Thank you. Over there in the back of the room, there's space over here in the front, a few seats. Who's the usher now? You make a good usher, you know that?
people that are standing in the back against the wall, we have some available seats here up front row, if you'd like. If not, feel free to stand where you are. That's fine.
No police today, you can sit there. Not a court hearing.
Right. I went to ceramics 2 or 3 times, but then I was interested. She's your fool.
About 4 rows back.
Oh, I haven't joined them. Another 2 years for you, you're done up there on Sunday.
It's going to just like what I talked about. It's all over adjacent property.
Hey everybody, good evening again. I see a few more people just walking in the back. If you want, there are seats up here. If you want to sit up front, if not, feel free. Just you can stand where you are, like I said before. First order of business is to salute our flag. So would everybody please rise to salute our flag?
I pledge allegiance to the
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, good evening. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful summer Monday evening. Before I get into the format of tonight's meeting, I'm just going to ask the members, my fellow members of the advisory board that are sitting at the dais, to just state their names so everybody knows who they're talking to. Starting from my left.
Shalom Langdon.
Alex Morris.
Justin Flansbaum.
Mike McLaughlin.
Moshe Lieberman.
Steve.
For some reason, we always have microphone malfunctions at the beginning of every meeting. Can everybody just make sure that your microphone is on? I want to remind the board members that are sitting at the dais that the microphones in this room do work, so whenever you speak, please speak into the microphone so the public can hear you. And then I know we'll have cooperation from the public in terms of noise. I know that everybody is anxious to hear what our professionals and what board members have to say. So, we have a full house. So we appreciate your cooperation. We'll make our best efforts to make sure that when we speak, it's into the mic and that everybody can hear us clearly. We're still waiting on one other member of the committee, but it's okay. We're going to start the meeting. What's the name? Ben Heineken. We're actually waiting for. So the format of tonight's meeting is that we have 3 reports, 3 subcommittee reports that.
Avi's listed.
Okay, all right. So there are a couple of members, and I'm sure they'll be here shortly, but we're not going to make everybody wait for a couple of members. So we have 3 subcommittee reports that our planner is going to give a brief overview on for everybody. A general overview of the individual subcommittee reports. The board members, the advisory board members, will give whatever comments they have, and then we will formally adopt the subcommittee reports that have been presented. After the subcommittee reports have been discussed between the board members and adopted by the board, we're going to do an hour of public comment. If the advisory board decides that there are certain comments or things that should be put into the reports after we hear from the public, we could do that. It's not the adoption of these reports is not like a formal resolution. It's a little more informal. So after we hear from the public, if there are things that we feel that should be put into the reports, we'll still have that opportunity. And just to let you know, this is the final meeting of the Master Plan Advisory Committee. We've been going through the process of the re-examination of the township's master plan for a little over a year now. We've had various subcommittees. They have met several times, at least several times for each subcommittee, and everybody's been working. Everybody spent a lot of time on this plan. What's going to happen is after tonight, the Lakewood Township Planning Board is going to have several hearings that are going to be dedicated solely to the master plan reexamination report. And I think they've already established, or in the process of establishing 3 or 4 dates right after Labor Day in early September to have public hearings that are, again, dedicated just to the master plan reexamination report, not regular planning board hearings. They'll be dedicated to that. After the planning board has had the opportunity to review the reexamination report of this advisory committee, they will either adopt the report as presented, they may make minor revisions, they may make major revisions, we don't know. But that will be another opportunity for the public to be heard at those 3 meetings. And then at some point thereafter, the township committee will also have the opportunity to review the report, and ultimately it will be the township committee that will adopt the report for the township of Lakewood and also enact ordinances that are related to the report. So that's the general overview of this, what's going to happen with this process moving forward after tonight. So again, there's going to be several planning board hearings on the report, and then the township committee will ultimately meet, and I'm sure conduct public hearings on the report as well. So the first report that we're going to have an overview of tonight is the Senior Community Needs Report. Unfortunately, the chairman of that subcommittee, who's also a member of the advisory board, Bill Hopday, he has some personal things to deal with. He was unable to join us tonight. So we're unable to hear from him, but we do have some other people on this advisory board who were part of that subcommittee. And Marty Truscott, our planner from TNM, is going to give an overview on that report. So without further ado, Marty and Stan, you just want to introduce yourselves to the public?
Good evening. My name is Marty Truscott with TNM Associates, we're township planners.
And Stan Slehenka from TNM Associates.
Okay, good evening. As Justin mentioned, I'm going to just put into the record Mr. Hopday's report for the senior community needs. I'm just going to hit the recommendations that were made as part of the committee and their input. I was not part of the interchange of the meetings of the senior community committee, so if there's any questions, they should be directed towards some of the committee members that are on the dais tonight. So let me just quickly go over those recommendations. There's a total of 7 of them, and I won't go into detail. The first one has to do with supporting some recommendations regarding snow ice remediation for what is termed the age-restricted communities, ARCs, is termed in the report. And that has to do with coming to terms with agreements that the township has with the age-restricted communities, how those items, that work is contracted for and billed and arranged for between the township and the community. And so there's some information about that, some detail about that. He points to a model in Toms River Township that's he encourages the township to look at. That's the first one. The second one states the granting of unreasonable variances requested by applicants must be stopped. And there's some background in terms of information as to the fact that the planning board and zoning board grant variances, and the recommendation is that that should be curtailed. 3, and this is one that there was not a consensus on. There was an absolute, the statement in the report, and by the way, I neglected to say, it's the final report dated July 13th, just for the record. Number 3, there's absolute need to protect the age-restricted communities from some uses on properties that abut age-restricted communities. Schools and age-restricted communities are not a good mix. And it's noted that the subcommittee members could not agree, there's not a consensus or even a majority opinion, so the subcommittee was divided on that point. So that's not something that there was a majority opinion. Number 4, it's recommended that a traffic light is needed at the intersection of Augusta Boulevard and Cross Street. I don't think I need to go on with that, that's straightforward. 5 states that seniors often need transportation for medical and social matters. There is a deficiency in programs that serve these needs. And in some of the background, he states that he gives some background as to the need for that transportation and how it would better serve the community to have that kind of service. 6, and I'm reading from page 6 in terms of recommendations. 6 is there's a need for emergency responders to be in close proximity to the age restricted communities. Again, that's a straightforward recommendation. 7, the report advocates deeding of property, the address being 1536 Massachusetts Avenue, that be deeded to either open space or to emergency response annex. And I don't believe that there's much background in terms of that. I think it's another recommendation. So those are the recommendations of the Senior Community Needs Subcommittee.
I know the advisory board members have had the opportunity to review the report. Is there anything that any of the advisory board members want to add or modify in the report?
One of the comments, I'm not sure how in detail Marty went into. I'm not sure how in detail Marty went into the report, but there is twice mentioned in the report the R4T zone, which actually was voided in April by Judge Ford, so I'm not sure if this hear you. So I'm not sure if this needs to be updated or if that's really just a clerical issue that would be. So I'm not sure if that R40B reference needs to be updated or if that's just a clerical issue that will be updated with the master plan once it's finalized.
Okay, so I mean, Marlene Stan, I don't know that that's anything that we have to do. I'm not sure if that we have to do anything with that right now. I think we can make that note in the report before it goes to the planning board.
Could the public speak?
Yeah, what we're going to do is we're going to go through these reports, and then we're going to have a public portion after we go through these reports, as opposed to having public at each.
So you're voting before the public speaks?
So, as I
It's
said,
not fair.
hang on. As I said in my introduction, the vote of the advisory board to accept the report is merely to gain a consensus from the advisory board that the report, at least in its current state, is basically acceptable. If there's going to be comments from the public, the advisory board will take those into account, and the report can be modified. It's not like we're voting on a resolution. That's not what's happening here. So the public will have the opportunity to weigh in on the reports.
Maybe after the public speaks, you will vote no on this advisory board.
Again,
Yeah, I'm just saying this, the public came out to speak. Let them speak. It's just not fair that you're voting before they're speaking. But again, I'm resting my case.
Thank you very much. Your comments are noted, thank you. Are there any other comments from the advisory board? So I'm not going to take a formal vote. Is everybody in favor of adopting this report in its current state?
No. It's still being checked out by the lawyers.
Okay, it's okay. We're going to hear from the public. We're going to hear from the public.
Don't sound that way.
Is everybody in favor of adopting this? Okay.
I say that it's accepted.
We can't hear you, Mike.
I don't have my microphone's not working, so I'm going to yell. I'm not
Hear the microphone, huh?
Is anything working this time? Hello, now?
Shout like
Now it's working? No, I'm saying that, I'm not saying we're adopting this. I tell you, I'm not going to say anything as it was written because as a committee we went through it, but I'm not going to vote on whether we approve this until after a year from the public.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, so we're going to talk about the next subcommittee report at this point, the downtown subcommittee report. The downtown subcommittee, just to give you a little background, did meet several times. They had public hearings, which were advertised, and there was a decent amount of public attendance. Ben Heineman chaired the downtown subcommittee. Ben, do you want to give a brief overview of what the findings of the subcommittee were and what was discussed?
Okay, thank you, Justin. As you said, we did have, unlike the senior committee, we did have a public committee meeting where the public did weigh in and we added in some of their input. And basically, the input that was added in was there was a suggestion from the public to turn the town square, I guess that's what it's called, the red square, into a multi-use, sometimes for parking and sometimes for recreation, in a way that it could be used for both each one when needed. And we added that into the report. Definitely on parking lots that are currently being used, particularly between 3rd and 1st Street, from Clifton to Lexington, there seems to be many parking lots that can be readjusted to give more parking spaces, and some of the grass areas redecorated or redone. It seems that some of the people already have been talking to some of the township committee people, and so we noted that in the report as well. The request was for a possible vertical parking structure to increase some parking, which was also added in. And other than that, I think it was pretty much the same. There's one correction that I think should be noted. It's in number 6, parking enforcement. In the third sentence, it says, particularly targeting store owners and their employees who seem to be unwanted violators should be minimized. I don't think that's what they meant. They wanted to target the store owners and their employees more so that the customers can have parking spaces. I don't think it should be minimized. I think it doesn't belong there. Marty, got that?
Yep.
Thank you.
What are the original recommendations?
The original recommendations, we'll do very quickly, was number 1, the downtown has this old school look and maybe some refreshing, some ideas should come forward. And the question was if there were any incentives from the township to encourage store owners not store owners, the building owners, to redo the outside of the stores to make it look nice. Whether it's signage or just the facade on the building, and perhaps even a tax abatement for new construction. If someone would take down an old building and put up a new building, perhaps they would do some kind of help out the owner, the building owner, if he wants to beautify the downtown. They will have some kind of tax abatement. I don't know how long. We didn't discuss that. It was just a suggestion to help change that look. Also, we spoke about the technology, bringing Verizon Fios perhaps down to downtown, which is currently not there, and any other technology that could come this way definitely would help the downtown. There is currently a no parking ordinance for downtown stores and buildings, and we want that to remain only for a 1st and 2nd story of a building. If someone builds a 5-story building, they should have to supply additional parking together with their with the building that they're building. But the ordinance that's there currently should remain for only the 2 floors. That's really what most of the downtown is today. The 4th thing we spoke about was some traffic bottlenecks. Definitely Clifton Avenue has a lot of traffic at certain times. The biggest bottleneck was on the corner of Route 88 and Clifton Avenue, and there was 2 suggestions. Number 1, to do a one-way grid, which is following what many downtown areas do, and definitely busy towns have a one-way grid, and that helps the flow very much. And so that was one suggestion. And then there was actually a detailed plan laid out for the corner of Route 88 and Clifton Avenue, how traffic will be able to flow a lot easier and a lot smoother with dedicated lanes that will turn from South Clifton onto, I guess that would be east of Route 88, into a dedicated lane so there'll be no stopping and no traffic. And 2 lanes going out of Clifton Avenue, all one way, and so that'll really smooth it out. And lastly, by adding angle parking on Clifton Avenue, depending on the engineers, what they can do, if they can do one side or both sides, with areas for trucks loading and unloading, is all part of that plan. The last thing was the parking enforcement, which I said before. So bring back the parking enforcement in a way that works out good for customers. We don't scare them away, but in a way that we keep parking available for new customers that want to come in. That was basically the entire report.
Any advisory board members want to comment or about the report?
Just one comment. As I recall the discussion, there was a discussion about having more enforcement, but I don't know if I agree with the verbiage of targeting business owners and their employees. It may be that that's what happens, that there are business owners who choose to park in front of their own store and don't move their cars. And any enforcement that we do for the 2-hour parking limits, we'll move them along just like everybody else. I don't know if I might finesse that language a little bit more, just, leave it with enforcement and don't specifically mention targeting anyone, because we're not targeting anyone. It's whoever decides to just park and leave their car all day, that's who we're targeting, whoever it is.
So you are correct, thank you. I didn't read the entire paragraph, but the beginning says there's been a long debate, the pros and cons on both sides. I'm actually on the side of not ticketing cars that come there. I don't want them to be ticketed, I want them to have a smooth and easy experience. Thank you. As a business owner in downtown for the last 27 years, I've been through both sides, and customers do get upset that they start getting ticketed. Basically, customers who are parked there are shopping, so there's no reason to ticket them. If they're shopping in 5 stores, so be it, be grateful. The stores on Second Street were the ones that were very vocal about having enforcement. They do have a big parking problem over there. There are a lot of stores. There's even a 5-story high-rise building over there. They were talking about opening up some of the alleyways and making more parking and that kind of stuff over there, which is important. And then they said that the store owners and their employees are parked there. Now, I think that's just something that the store owners themselves should deal with amongst themselves.
And I agree. And just so you know, a few years ago, the township actually passed an ordinance for a enforcement that was able to be done by the inspection department. It didn't have to have police officers going around ticketing, but it's really more of a motivation. It's a small fine, but basically meant to tell people this isn't what you're supposed to be doing. You should be moving along because you're impeding the commercial traffic that's supposed to be here. And from time to time, the township has made an enforcement push. And whenever that happens, it alleviates the issue. So what I would prefer to see the report say is that there should be a consistent effort at enforcement because it works. And it doesn't have to have kind of a punitive sense to it, because it really isn't. It's really just meant to motivate people. And if you have people that are abusing these, then when they get that fine, even if it's $20 or $25, they're not going to be happy about it. That'll move them along. So I would prefer that the report reads a little bit more than that, but otherwise, I applaud this tremendous, excellent report. Thank you.
I like that it says there are some pro and some con, and I'm still con. I know they can get rid of the store owners, but ultimately some customers are going to suffer, and that's going to hurt everybody. And I don't think that's smart. But because, as I said, I listened to the public, and because the public did give the input, I put it into the report.
And by the way, the inspectors usually start out with warnings. So they'll go through the area. When they see cars that are there, before they actually get to enforcement, they have warning stickers that they'll put on under the windshield wipers or whatever of the cars. That usually moves people along before they ever have to issue the summons. So,
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. So is the board okay to move on to the next report? Are we move on to the next one? Thank you, Ben. Thanks a lot. Okay, so the third and final report that we're going to discuss tonight is the report of the Housing Density Subcommittee. The chairman of that subcommittee also is dealing with some personal issues, and that's we shouldn't laugh about that. So our planner is going to give the overview of the subcommittee report. Some members of this advisory board that are sitting here were also members of that subcommittee. So we're going to let Marty do the overview of that report.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. The report's dated July 17th. It's about 6 pages, and I'm going to give some high points, as Justin mentioned. The subcommittees met several times, and some of the meetings were in public. The subcommittee was, as part of its examination, reviewed the whole town in different areas of the town. They were informed by looking at the Smart Growth Plan, the 2007 re-examination report, and the 2014 Land Use Plan Amendment. It was the subcommittee's intent to be consistent in terms of recommendations with the existing development patterns of different areas. And as part of that, as part of their task, they were also asked to look at some different requests related to the zoning map. They looked at the general area and the locale rather than the specific tract, and the recommendations are addressed more the neighborhood rather than the specific areas. The subcommittee came up with a development strategy approach in terms of some of the recommendations that are inherent in part of the recommendations and I talked about this at the last meeting of the Housing Density Committee, about interior streets of developments being widened to provide for better circulation, for bus circulation, for trash pickup, some areas possibly drop-off areas, pick-up and drop-off areas for buses, areas in development for open space, provide a little more open space, more so than required now, and especially one of the major items was a deeper setback or perimeter buffer around the area, especially along major streets, and then also landscape buffer between differing land uses, again, more so than what's required in the current ordinance. One of the major considerations of the subcommittee as part of its work was infrastructure, and the fact that infrastructure has to keep up with the timing of any changes in zoning and development. They have to be, corresponding timely improvements. We're talking about roads, sewers, and water as part of any new development. And the subcommittee is recommending that the planning board prioritize and integrate infrastructure improvements as part of its recommendations in the master plan. So some of the requests, there were about 20 requests that were made of the committee that evaluated. In general, some of them were denied, and some were approved, and some were issued for further study. In general, there were the area near Cross Street, West Cross Street, up above James Street. That area, there were several requests in that area, and the subcommittee approved those requests in terms of R10 to R12 type density. As they said in the report, 3 to 4 units per acre is what's recommended there. Currently, it's R40, basically a 1 acre zone, 1 acre lots for residential in that area. There were also requests in the area, what we call the Cross Street Core. It's the area bordered by Cross Street, Prospect Street in Massachusetts. It's an area, part of the Smart Growth Plan area that's targeted for mixed-use development and to absorb a lot of the growth accommodate some of the growth that's going to occur in the town. So there were several areas there, and there were recommendations that differed in terms of the type of area. But those were the recommendations there. There were a number of other smaller areas that were proposed that the committee dealt with. There's also a request in the Route 70 area near New Hampshire Avenue, basically proposed an area of business zones, staying business, but it would allow changing the designation so that it would allow some housing, and that would be consistent with the smart growth plan in terms of providing for mixed use of housing. There were several other more general requests, and one that two related to adult communities, and the recommendation or the request was basically to drop any requirement having to do with age restriction on the planned communities where parcels, there's a conditional use requirement in the ordinance that allows parcels of 100 acres or more to, that have to be age restricted. And so the recommendation was to create a new zone district that would allow 4 communities, planned communities, of 100 acres or more, again, at the same density, but without any kind of age restriction. The other request had to do with schools.
Mr. Chairman, can we repeat that, please?
So Martin, can you repeat the last thing?
The recommendation for the adult communities that to create a new zone district for what they call an R40C that allows for new planned communities on parcels of 100 acres or more at a density of 4.5 units per acre without any age restriction. The next more general request had to do with schools as permitted use throughout Lakewood to remain intact, and the recommendation was to continue to allow schools as permitted use throughout Lakewood, but further study of the Planning Board Township Committee is recommended to provide sufficient additional lands for school sites. And then the last part of it is we talked with the subcommittee about in 2007 master plan recommendations. There were a number of recommendations made as part of that master plan re-examination. 35 in all in terms that were dealt with or either approved or denied, but the vast majority of those were not implemented since 2007. So the subcommittee affirmed those recommendations of the planning board, either to approve or deny those recommendations. And those were what we call non-implemented changes. And so that the subcommittee affirmed those so they can go forward, and that would be incorporated into the master plan. That's my report.
Anybody from the advisory board, any comments or questions or anything you want to add or subtract?
Well, first I asked that, I think it's a little bit tough for the public to see this report and respond to it, since they didn't have enough time to look at it anyway. I don't know when this was posted to the website. It's awfully difficult just following it, having been at the meetings. I'm looking and it's difficult to follow. And I think it's unfair to ask the public to take a look at this with the 6 pages of recommendations and try to comment on what we have without even having a copy in front of them. It's not as though we had copies about them. So I have a serious concern with the way we're managing that. I thought some of the discussions that we talked about with schools were, and I may be wrong, but as I remember, I thought it was that we were looking for ways to consolidate and put schools in specific areas, but then if we say we can have schools in specific areas, but we allow them to go any place they want in town, it seems like it's contrary to exactly what we're trying to do when we say put them in specific areas. So I'm not sure that that is what I thought that we were going after the committee. That once we designate that we're looking for specific areas to get larger schools instead of populating the town with smaller schools all over the place, almost like weeds, that we can turn around and say, look, here's large areas, we put up a school for 5,000 kids in this district and 5,000 kids here. But if we're allowed to open up anywhere we want, we're saying, do whatever you want, we don't care.
Have a technical comment for TNN. I know in your discussion about the planned communities non-age restricted, you reference potentially creating a new zone. I wouldn't refer to it as R40C, that needs to be. I wouldn't refer to that potential new zone as R40C, just because that could be confused with the R40 cluster zone, which already exists. Thank you.
I just have one comment, Mike, on what you mentioned about schools. I think we have to differentiate between what's permitted and what's not. I can yell. Okay. It's the first time so many people wanted to hear me speak. I really appreciate it. I'm just making a point about the schools, and I'm not advocating for them in any particular zone or advocating against them in any particular zone. There may come a time for that. But what I want to point out is that when we're asking the township to designate areas for schools, then those should be specific areas that they can be designed better, so you can co-locate schools and you can have shared resources. But what I read the recommendation to say is that we would not say, yes, the township should dedicate area for schools, but schools cannot go anywhere else or in other specific areas. If a school can go somewhere, right now, it's been the position in the town that schools are permitted in all zones. It doesn't mean encouraged or facilitated by the town. And I think it's important to understand that distinction with regard to the recommendation.
And I think just to make a point on that, the last sentence of that is further study of the planning board of township committees recommended to provide a sufficient additional land for school sites. So really talking about if there is open land or if the town has the additional land, perhaps we should look at that.
You gotta shout.
Sorry about that.
Motion, talk to the mic, motion. Say that again.
The point was, I was just reading the last sentence here in this recommendation, which is the further study by the planning board of township committees recommended to provide for sufficient additional land for school sites. So if there is additional land that the town has, I think the recommendation is to look into that of how schools, as a school zone, or how schools can perhaps see that and take advantage of that, or look to ways for schools to go there. Just following up on your point and Steve's point.
And I know Marty's taking notes of this. Marty's noting the conversation, so. Okay. Is there anybody else from the advisory board that wants to comment on anything?
I have one more comment that this is from Marty. I think it looks like number 20, it should be R.
Yeah, just a correction to number 20, it should say rezone area from R20 to R10A. It just says 1220. So that's just, and then the recommendation should say approve R10A. That's R10. That's just a typo.
There's a typo, he said. For people that are standing in the back, there are seats available up front. If anybody wants to sit up front here, and I ask that people please be quiet if you're standing in the back. Just because you're standing in the back doesn't mean that nobody can hear you. We can hear you. So there are three seats up front if anybody wants to take them. If not, we ask everybody to please keep quiet that's standing in the back and just, let us continue the meeting. Okay, are there any other comments from the advisory board on this report? Okay. Stan, did you want to add something?
Yeah, and I don't know if you're opening it to the public, but before you open it to the public, I think it's important for the public to be aware of what the process is and what the role of this master plan committee is. And I'll be as brief as possible. Essentially, the master plan committee and its various subcommittees have met and compiled these various recommendations that are what they are. They are recommendations to the full planning board. The full planning board is the one that adopts the master plan. And as Justin had indicated earlier in the meeting, the master plan will be conducting 3 to 4, I think we have 4 meetings that potentially are scheduled public meetings that will be fully advertised. And all these recommendations and all the issues that are being presented and recommended to the full planning board by the committee will be discussed as part of those public hearings. This body, the master plan committee body, if it votes to forward the recommendations of the subcommittee onto the planning board, is not formally adopting anything. It's the planning board that actually adopts the master plan. So you will have an opportunity, if you disagree with anything that the committee is recommending or any of its subcommittees is recommending, you will have the opportunity to come before the full planning board and voice your opinion and perspective, and the planning board acts to adopt the master plan. That master plan document will be on file and available for public review and inspection prior to the initiation of those planning board hearings. So you'll have an opportunity to see the document, all the maps, all the information that the planning board is considering to be adopted. Once the master plan is then adopted, it's the governing body or the township committee that actually adopts the zoning ordinances that implement the recommendations that are contained in the master plan. Even the master plan itself is an advisory document, recommendations, maybe that has a little bit more force in law than what this master plan committee is doing tonight, but those recommendations still need to be implemented by the township committee, and there will be public hearings on those ordinances as well. So there's a lot of points in this process moving forward where you're going to have an opportunity to have your voice heard, as well as this evening that you're going to have your voice heard. So I think it's really important for the public to understand what's going on here. And ultimately, the planning board, when it considers the master plan document, when it's having the formal public hearings of the master plan, can either approve, modify, or reject any of the recommendations that this committee, this master plan committee, and its subcommittees are making to the board. So I just want to make sure that's clear before you start taking public comment.
Thank you, Stan. I think that further clarifies what we stated in the beginning, that this board doesn't really vote on anything. It just really votes to pass the documents in the planning board. So thanks for that clarification.
Through the chair. If I can just emphasize what you just said. What we're doing over here is really nothing but a recommendation. I sat on the last master plan committee. Most of the recommendations were not adopted.
That's correct.
Okay, so I think everybody, that further clarifies what we're doing here this evening. We have a packed room. We'd like to give everybody the opportunity to comment that would like that opportunity. I put on the agenda that we're going to have 1 hour of public comment. If there are more people that want to speak after an hour, we will give everybody the opportunity to speak, so we can include comments at the board's pleasure into these reports that are going to be forwarded to the planning board. So everybody, I just ask, just keep your comments on point, keep your comments as brief as possible, and we're here to listen.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for your volunteer work. Many of us do volunteer work throughout the town, and we appreciate the time and effort you've put into it. A couple of comments, if I may, and I'll try to follow the sequence that was followed earlier. On the Senior Community Needs Report, I think there may have been some concern over the comment of the need to protect the age-restricted communities. I would respectfully suggest that a key concept of planning is appropriate buffering for all communities, not just age-restricted. I think a crucial concept that should be part of a recommendation, whether it's from this group or the planning board to the township committee, is that development that causes a detraction in the value of the existing tax rateables should not be actively promoted. Why do we want to add a rateable on one property and lose value on another property? That is ultimately counterproductive. And so I would ask that possibly even in the senior community report, the age-restricted component come out, and we simply say that buffering is extremely important across all communities, regardless of their zone. I also wanted to offer some additional comment, which I think would be appropriate in the report related to the use of 1536 Massachusetts Avenue. I realize that's a very specific tract of land, and you're looking at a much bigger picture. In several meetings, Mayor Coles asked for the opinions of the senior communities about how 1536 should be used. And a survey was put together. where seniors were afforded the opportunity to identify whether they found one of 8 uses to be tolerable or not tolerable, and then given the opportunity to rank order their preferences among those they consider to be tolerable. This document will ultimately make it to the Township Committee courtesy as that it goes to the Board Associations first. Of the 1,200 or so respondents, the vast majority listed their number one priority to be a police, fire, EMS annex. Now, what's interesting about that is not a selfish request of the southwest portion of the community. The southwest portion of the community, as I believe your fire commissioners have told you, are outside a 2-mile zone. And ultimately, that has the risk of affecting the insurance rating for every property in the entire town. So even if you lived at the far end of the north end of the town, it's in your best interest to make sure that every home in Lakewood is within the 2-mile ISO distance. I would ask you to vigorously support that police, fire, EMS annex. We're not asking for a change of the headquarters, we're asking for an annex. I see the police looking over here a little bit concerned. Don't worry, guys, you're welcome. Downtown work. Again, I appreciate the great work. I would really hope you include in your report that the good people in the southwest of town can't get to the downtown. We can't use your store. It shouldn't take 45 minutes to drive from Eagle Ridge Circle and the Fairways to 2nd Avenue in Lakewood. And so I do think that's an appropriate comment in the downtown report. And I know that we've all been talking about it, but the more people that bring that issue to the table, the more likely we are to find solutions, and I think solutions is the key word. Okay. Thank you, Justin. I spoke at the last density subcommittee meeting, and now that we have the full group here, I want to re-raise some points. I am very, very concerned about this clustered housing with no age restriction on lots or areas of 100 acres or more. To the best of my knowledge, there's only 2 in the entire town. Okay? The majority of the people in this room are extremely worried that the valuation of their homes will drop by 30 to 50% if the golf course is turned into a housing of any size or dimension. There is ample documentation in the state of New Jersey and other eastern states, eastern board states, that when a golf course is turned into a residential area, the valuation of the adjacent properties drops by 30 to 50%. And I respectfully ask you, your homeowners, would you not be worried if there was the possibility of your home losing 30 to 50% of its value? And I'd add to that, if you're a senior, that is your major investment. I think there have to be solutions found that do not adversely affect the current taxpayers who contribute somewhere in the order of $9 million to this town. That's no small amount of money. I also want to comment about the whole issue of schools here. I have not found in my time in this community, and I think you know I've been fairly active, a single person who is opposed to the education of our young men and women. Not one. We heard at the last density subcommittee meeting 4 different neighborhoods, incidentally representing different races, different beliefs, different religions, all complain about the impact of the school on their community, on their residents. The feisty conversations occurred at the end of the hearing out in the foyer. I think we need to look at schooling if we can have, Senator Singer years ago suggested a incubator for schools. And why that idea didn't have merit, I don't know. But I do think we need to look at the appropriate locations of schools. And as a condition of use, because it is a special condition, we define whether it is a non-residential or a residential school. There seems to be, for the non-residential schools, complaints about congestion. We heard about Cross Street at the last hearing. For the residential schools, it is complaints about lack of supervision after the school hours. I've stood at this microphone in the past and told you firsthand about teenagers just being kids, leaving their school properties and looking in the windows of my home. Shouldn't be happening, folks, and that's not intended to be a personal comment. We need to look at responsible supervision of students. We need to look at the impact of students on the neighborhood. When I was a teenager, I did anything I could get away with. That's typical of every teenager. If a special condition of schooling is to be permitted in a residential area, there need to be additional conditions related to supervision, parking, and control. Just last week, our dear friends in the police department got 2 more calls about basketball at 1:30 in the morning. That's not appropriate in a good community like this. I see a head agreeing with me over there.
No,
In any community, I think all of these points, as well as an emphasis on the importance of infrastructure, deserve to be added to your acceptance of these reports. And if I have any questions of you, I'll be happy to answer them. And if not, I'll sit down. Thank you.
Carol Suckno, 59 Foxwood Road, from the Fairways. At the last meeting I attended, somebody asked, it was a master plan subcommittee meeting, and one member was asked to define smart growth, a term that's constantly used. Either this person could not define the term or chose not to share it with us. We still need to know, what is smart growth and who does it benefit? And who determines what is smart?
They don't know.
Mike is going to read you an excerpt from.
I do have one that I looked up for our own edification as well, so we have an opportunity to read it for you. Smart growth strategies allow communities to grow in a way that preserve open spaces and habitat loss, maximize economic prosperity, and are equitable to all. That is the state's definition.
Thank you, Mike. That's quite a revelation. The second thing I want to address is Lakewood needs to move forward, but not for just one group. The seniors see no effort toward unity or compromise. No regard is given to our investment in Lakewood. Our perimeters are constantly compromised by projects that lower the value of our investments and deny us the quality of life we mistakenly thought we would enjoy in Lakewood. Meeting after meeting, nothing is resolved. Mayor Cole said in the newspaper, and I quote, "We are one town, we are one big family." In my opinion, it was very unrealistic. Those in the audience who do not feel included in this family, I ask you to stand up. Thank you. I, for one, feel like an orphan. I guess the others join me.
Good evening. Dawn Rogers, 15 Ivy Hill Road in the Fairways. I just need clarification on something that was said in the beginning. There was a list of things, and one of them was a traffic light at Augusta Boulevard and Cross Street. And I'd like clarification on that as to why.
Augusta Boulevard is not a public street.
That's right.
Is anybody that was on that subcommittee want to comment on that?
Justin?
We were told that that belongs to the Fairways, and for 20 years, We have been going in and out of Augusta Boulevard, and there is no need for a traffic light unless there's an alternative motive why there would be more traffic used on our road. I'd like some clarification of why that was listed.
The only thing I can say is during the discussions when we talked about the traffic light, and I don't know if it's true or not true, but there were some concerns from some of the, there's an industrial park further down the street where there are trucks coming in and out, and felt that people coming out of Augusta Boulevard, sometimes they felt that people.
No, no way.
I understand, just letting you know what information we received, why we suggested that maybe there should be a traffic light there. Just that there was a lot of traffic going on, and it might make it a little safer to come in and out. That was our only reason.
We're a residential adult community, and there has in 20 years never been a need for a traffic light there. And I just think it should be stricken from whatever was listed in your beginning.
You're talking about the senior community needs report.
Yeah, you had a whole list of 6 or 7 things, and that was one of them. And I did not understand it. I just like the clarification of it.
Yeah, I think Mr. McLaughlin tried to answer that
Yes.
question. Yeah. It was
Who
a
here
recreation
regularly
committee.
uses Augusta Boulevard to get back out to Cross Street? Okay. Does anybody feel that there should be a traffic light there? No. Thank you. Okay, I guess we're striking from the report.
Thank you very much.
Jim Campbell, 6 Roads Report, Fairways also. I'd like to comment on the Density Subcommittee report. I think I heard, and it was smart growth in the same paragraph, which didn't make a lot of sense, that the infrastructure should keep up. The infrastructure is awful. The police seem to get around town okay, but I don't know how the fire department or an ambulance could get up or down 9 or anywhere near there at any traffic time. It's dangerous. So I think the infrastructure should catch up, not just keep up. I think if you look at it now, I would say Lakewood's terribly overbuilt. Now, I guess you could build up. It's not going to get any bigger, Lakewood. You could go up. But if you don't take care of the roads, if you don't improve infrastructure, there's no point in getting any bigger. I will tell you, I seldom shop in Lakewood. Okay? I can't get here. It's easier when you're going somewhere else to hit a ShopRite somewhere. I came tonight, it took 45 minutes. I'm probably only 10 minutes away. All right? Infrastructure should come first, and then if you can do that right, then you can build all you want. But the infrastructure should come first, not catch up. It hasn't caught up in the last 50 years. Why would you expect it might now? Thank you.
I was today by a chiropractor. And the question is, what is a young man like me doing by the chiropractor? The answer is, a month ago I was hit by a car. Direct result from the higher density that 10 years ago this master plan recommended. And I was sitting there, and I was thinking, I'm sitting over here, you know why? Because these members of 10 years ago were selfish enough to just help out the greedy builders, and they didn't care about people like me sitting by the chiropractor, or worse. I have a question to this members of the master plan. You're recommending higher density. Obviously is, I don't know, but I assume that with putting higher density, the roads will be more dangerous. Obviously you disagree with that. You don't think that the roads will be more dangerous. My question to these members of the committee is, are you willing to take on over yourself the danger that will happen? That means that if it is more dangerous, the incident should happen with you or your family members rather than members of the public that have to suffer out of this high density? It's a question. Most probably you won't answer that. I'll ask the members of the public. Do you think is that they should pay the price of the crime that they are committing? Some of the members in this room believe in God.
Amen.
And some of the members don't believe. For the members that don't believe in God, remember, if something happens to these members of their families, remember, and you'll have proof that there is a God, and you will believe as everybody else. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. I ditto everything that Shalom said. Shalom, right? Said, we have a higher authority that needs to be answered to. Hashem would not go for people who only have a God of money. Money should not be an issue. It should be safety of the people. Safety comes first. We don't need that on our hands, a blood of people, for somebody to make money. This is a shame, okay? But that's not all I want to say. I have some notes based upon what you've said here. First of all, getting back to the town center, sir, Red Bank is doing it, many towns are doing it. You put meters over there, and if a person's abusive, they'll pay for it in the meter. And they won't stay there, because they won't want to spend the guilt to stay there. They'll do what they have to, and they'll leave. So there'll be nobody taking a parking spot for themselves and be selfish. So your customers can't come in and out and do your business. Okay, number one. Age restriction, that's where we all seniors come to a place that's restricted by age. If you're going to change that, then we're going to be living with children. Not that I love children, but children have their place with their families, and adults have their place with their families. And we need to know that where we move is protected because we bought into this. When we came into our development, that was the rule. The rule can't change now and allow anybody to just come anywhere they want and build a high-density project behind your senior developments and things like that. That's ludicrous. It's no balance. You have to have a balance. You can't be just doing for certain sex. It's not the way to do business. Okay. What about rateables? I heard over here that you want to take rateable property and turn it into residential. This is crazy. How would you give up rateables? We need the money in the town from those that need to pay the money, companies, corporations, and let them stay in their spot. Every school should have a school zone. Every business should have a business zone, and every residential should have their zone. They shouldn't be mixing all over because some builder bought a piece of property 50 years ago over here. Oh, I could build now. I want to put it there because I need to make money. Wrong. It's wrong. It's ludicrous. It's no way to do business. And you guys are supposed to be the caretakers. And I'm telling you, you got a higher authority to answer to, just like he said. You got to answer. I mean, there's things, if you don't pay consequences in this life, there's other life to pay. Believe me, and there's a lot of tragedies come your way when you don't do what you're in a position to do. If you can't do it legally, then you should not be in this position. You should quit the job and get somebody else that'll want to do it legally and properly. And that's again, you spoke of schools. Sure, you can have schools, but you can have schools in a zone. You make it a zone, and it's beneficial and profitable to those schools to be in a zone because you have a road, and everybody has buses going on that one particular road. Others could avoid that one road. But when you have a school here and a million buses, and you have a school here and millions of buses, these gentlemen can't do their job to save lives because they can't get down the road. The fire department can't get down the road. I guess I'm finished? Continue? Okay.
Be quick though, Marcus, there's lots.
But I'd like to know, did you not say that you wanted to take a age-restricted zone and convert it to something different? Did you not say that? And then you did say something, and I'd like to call you out on that, too. You said that basically what's happening here really don't mean too much because they're not the powers that are going to make a decision. But if you're feeding those powers the wrong things, they're making wrong decisions. You have to feed them the proper information. It's garbage in, it's garbage out in the computer business. You need to have the right information being presented to the people who make a decision. Or otherwise, they're going to say, that's what they brought me, and that's what I believe was correct. I put them in that position, so yes, I guess it's okay. And that's the wrong thing. And you have the onus of coming up with the right thing. Or else don't do the job. Don't do the job if you can't do it properly. My concern is for all citizens in Lakewood, not for any particular group, because we have brothers and sisters all over here. This gentleman should have won. But that's another story. He was running for the political position. Okay. Nevertheless, I'd like to know, why would you take rateable properties, it makes no sense to me, and turn it into residential? Is there a reason? Is there a way you can explain why you would want to do that? Am I crazy? Am I saying something wrong? Seriously, who wants to field the call? That question. Who has an answer? Nobody has an answer. You guys wrote the papers.
Can you tell us what part of the report you're...
Okay, well, I don't have, he rattled off 6 different points. Okay, this is the one that said that you wanted to take a rateable property and turn it into residential property.
Okay, is this property on Route 70?
Yes.
There was a question that was asked, and we're going to try to get an answer.
I think just to clarify, we're talking about
Shout, Marty.
this business zone to allow the inclusion of housing within a business zone.
Right.
So mixed use. type of-
Okay, so you're willing to give up a business zone that's rateable, where the city, the town can make money to put up residential projects?
So I think that's a very good question. I think that Marty and Stan, give us a little bit of a background of the logic behind mixed-use types of zones, which we see popping up all over the state of New Jersey. But give us a little bit of a background of that logic.
And the idea is to provide opportunities for new development, higher density development, where the infrastructure is.
Why? Traffic is horrendous.
I would ask if there was a question posed, please give the planner an opportunity to talk.
Okay, I
Let's not scream and
apologize.
yell about it. There's a question, we're going to get an answer,
Okay.
and we're going to move on. Thank you.
And we all are struggling with these microphones, so I apologize. But essentially, what it does is it provides an opportunity to place higher density mixed-use development in places where you have the existing infrastructure, such as along the highway corridors. That's consistent with smart growth, so you take the burden and pressure off of other areas. And the idea is, because you have mixed use, which mixed use, by the way, is actually a very, very high rateable. You're not taking ratables away from the township. But what you do is you have the commercial uses in close proximity and walking distance of the new residential development. And therefore, you take traffic away from the thoroughfares and put the commercial uses and other services close to the new residential development. That's really the essence of what the Smart Growth Plan is intending to do. Provide for open spaces in the appropriate location, and then concentrating down development where you have highways and where you have the infrastructure to support that.
Okay, but the issue is, if you do that, I have presently a development, it's residential. And now behind me, there's empty property, okay? So with your proposal, a shopping center could go right behind the house. Is it right or wrong?
Well, I mean, the shopping centers can go there now. I mean,
No, the shopping can't go into a zone that's not for commercial.
No, that's not what we're proposing. What we're proposing is if you take areas along Route 70, for example, where you just have commercial uses that are permitted, and allow for the mixed use where you have residential uses proximate to the commercial services, you would still require the same, you would still require the same amount of buffering that you would have for the commercial uses. So there would not be any decrease in the buffering standards. In fact, actually, the standards for that development would probably have increased standards that would require the buffering and screening to protect adjoining residential areas.
Okay, your name is Marty? I'm sorry, are you Marty?
I'm the really good-looking one.
What's your name again?
No, my name is Stan.
Stan, okay, Stan. If you were to put in your plan that a particular location would be in this mixed use, and not to be spread later when they come up and say, I want to build here now, you have it over there, I want it over here, that's a different story. But we see too much abuse. And the abuse is, as soon as you give an inch, they want the whole ball field. And if that's in that planning board or planning master plan, they're going to use that against us and put it anywhere they like. These builders are very shrewd. I think you know that by now.
The idea is actually to have the standards very, very strongly enunciated and described in the master plan and reflected in the ordinances. And if you actually look at the smart growth plan that actually has been adopted by the planning board, in a general sense, that's basically what has been proposed. The idea of this master plan, the new master plan, would be to be much more specific and provide the specific recommendations and requirements for that smart growth plan that would be implemented by the ordinances. We as professionals can provide the committee and provide the planning board with recommendations. Obviously, they have to adopt it. But essentially, a lot of planning has gone on. And I understand fully the concerns that the community has with regards to overdevelopment, the impact of traffic, the need to preserve open spaces. All those components are part of the overall smart growth plan. And I think when you have an opportunity to see them collectively, when the full master plan is available for your review and inspection, and you can compare that to the smart growth plan, I think you're favorably disposed to that plan.
Okay, the only issue that I have is that I'm hearing recommendations, and those recommendations are not sitting well. And if they move forward, and the powers that be say, okay, they said it was good, this is what they recommended, we're going to go for it, then where do we go from here? So it needs to be corrected now. There's many things that need to be corrected now, and then one of the items is about the schools. You said, oh, well, you could build the schools here, and then you could build them over there and over here and anywhere you like. No. You have a zone for schools, and you keep the schools in that zone. You don't have them all over the place to screw up the traffic and everything else. It's not safe for the children. It's not safe for anyone. I don't want to go to a chiropractor like he's wherever he went. Maybe he's at his chiropractor. Okay, I'm gonna wrap it up. But thank you, yes, okay, thank you.
Patty Robinson, 79 Eagle Ridge Circle, the Fairways. I'm disappointed in the density committee report. I think I've been to enough of these meetings and complained enough about the density in Lakewood and how it is affecting everyone's lives, not just ours. As I reported before, the townhouses that were built at Cross Street and 9, where each townhouse has 8 bedrooms, And they're building easily over 100 of those in that, right there at Cross and 9. The traffic is already a nightmare there, and this is just getting worse. Now you're talking about taking the golf course, and it was originally supposed to be 55-plus community. Now you're saying no, any age community. We'll have the same type of condos or houses there with 8 bedrooms per unit. We can't sustain this kind of growth in Lakewood at this time. You've got to work on that. It's just not possible. And the only reason I can figure they want to put a light at Augusta and Cross is because they know that that's what they're going to build there at the golf course is another And you talk about Route 70 and, putting, more housing and instead of the businesses there. You don't know how many times I've almost hit young men who are crossing Route 70 to go from the houses on one side over to the Wawa and the businesses over there. That's a 4-lane highway. They should not be trying to cross there, but they do it all the time. We're also having an issue now with the condos or whatever they are there at Cross Street and Route 9. Young children playing right near the road. We had one of our residents call the police last night because there was a young child, about 6 or 7 years old, with her 2 little brothers or sisters who were only about 2 and 3, crossing Cross Street. No parents around. When the woman called the police said, well, we're trying to educate the children. What about educating the parents? We need to stop this. We moved to Lakewood for a reason. We loved our home, we love our community, but at this point, all of the building needs to stop until we can get better roads and actually get a better smart plan, because at this time, this isn't a smart plan at all.
Al Longo, 36 Skyline Drive in Fairways. I've been asked to remind the planners that Augusta Boulevard is a private road. I think that was brought up, but I've been asked to remind you of that. Is there any place in the reports, and I'm mixing both the senior report and the density report, about sidewalks?
I'm going to say that there's something that, I'm not sure if the reports specifically address sidewalks, but there's a big emphasis in the reports on different types of infrastructure than what we're used to. So there's an emphasis in the reports that before any of these recommendations are considered by either the planning board or the township committee, there should be an emphasis on different types of development patterns, wider streets, infrastructure improvements being placed before certain types of development, dedicated areas for pickup and drop-off, et cetera, things along that nature. So I don't remember specific emphasis on sidewalks, but we should certainly add that in if it's not in already. I don't know.
Are we going to hold the builders and developers accountable for sidewalks?
This report includes a wide array of improvements, and actually there's a strong recommendation in these reports that states that no waivers or should be granted for any of these recommendations that are being recommended by the committee.
Well, 2 things I'd like to make you aware of, if you're not already aware of there. You know the busing consortium, correct? We all know that, the busing consortium that takes care of the courtesy busing for the private schools. There is in that legislation an emphasis on sidewalks, because sidewalks ultimately decrease the need for the millions of dollars that we spend on busing. And if we have no mention of sidewalks, we're not only not adhering to the stipulations of the pilot from Senator Singer, which runs out in 2 years, although I don't know what's going to happen there. Also, are you aware that the town council the other night gave $1.2 million after $84,000 the meeting before to reinstitute activities at the high school? I'm not doing a bird walk here, and I know that's not your immediate concern. My concern is you build sidewalks. We don't have to worry about another almost $1.5 million of our tax dollars going out like that, because we wouldn't need it, because we would recoup that money from less busing. The other issue with that, if we cluster the schools, we have better busing and safety. Third issue was safety for all people. Last December, I almost killed 2 Orthodox people walking on the Sabbath at night with their dark clothing on Cross Street. We need sidewalks in this town for all safety and for economy. So it's not a selfish issue on my part. And finally, to speak to something that Rob brought up before, I've been in education over 50 years. On my 45-minute drive to the meeting tonight, I usually go past schools, and I have a keen eye, because I've been around schools for a long time. I went past 3 major schools on the way, and I saw anywhere from 20 to 30 boys outside, running in the street, running around the building, with absolutely no supervision. My old administrator's eyes from the public school said, unacceptable. My old coach's eyes from camp said, unacceptable. My legal eyes say lawsuit. So we have to rein this in until we get the infrastructure, as many people say. I know I'm being repetitive. Many people have said this already. We have to rein in the development until we get a better handle. And even last week at this podium, people said it wasn't necessarily the homes being built that were the problem. It was the fact that even though the homes are here, the schools will always be here. And even though the people may move to Jackson, Toms River, and Howe, they will come to Lakewood for the schools. So if we clustered the schools, we'd do much better for everyone. So we need to do that, and we need to do it quickly, and the sidewalks would save us millions. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Aaron Rubin. I live at 11 Sherman Street in the Red Oak development. I'd like to take a little bit of a, I guess, a turn, if you can do that in Lakewood still, and point you to the Housing Density Subcommittee report, specifically to item number 15, where it talks about rezoning an area along Burnside Avenue from R15 to R10. I live in that area. Lots of my neighbors actually are here as well. They took out time from their busy schedules and from the families to come here to voice our views on this as to the, frankly, for lack of a better word, the ludicrousness of even requesting such a request. Essentially, we live in an area where there's a lot of open, vacant land. It's currently zoned at R15. I live in an R15 community. The neighboring White Oak neighborhood is an R15 community. We enjoy a quality of life that's almost unrivaled anywhere in Lakewood these days, because we can actually get out of our driveways and drive to where we need to go before we get stuck in traffic. Someone, and I have no idea who, requested or hired a certain engineer who will be unnamed, and asked him to send a request into the density subcommittee to request from unnamed people that this area be rezoned to R10. No one in the neighborhood wants that. Not one person that lives there wants that. None of us want that. Number one. Number two, rezoning that area would cause substantial detriment to our quality of life. A, it would subject us to additional traffic. B, there would be safety hazards. C, there's simply no positive reason to do this. So I know that the recommendation is to deny and to not change the zoning, and I urge you to please keep to that, because I know that there is an area of land over there that somehow we don't really understand how got rezoned from R15 to R12, a big farm. We're still trying to figure out who requested that, how it happened, but it did happen, so we urge you to keep the character of our neighborhood. Please build houses, build single-family houses on big lots. People can raise big families, have good quality of life, and please don't destroy our quality of life. Thank you.
I'm Sugar 18 Geffen Drive. I'm following up on my neighbor, Ari Rubin's request on Burnside Avenue.
I actually came to a meeting a few months ago and put in a request for the lot that he mentioned that's zoned R12, that's sandwiched between two R15 zones, and it doesn't make sense. And it went into the minutes, got approved, and then I come back and I look, and the only thing that got approved in our neighborhood is to take this R15 beautiful wooded neighborhood on Burnside that's behind my house, and take it from R15 to R10. But nothing was done that would make sense, actually, to make this farm R15, like the rest of the neighborhood. That's really what should happen in this neighborhood, that everything should be conforming, that there's R15 all over. This farm is R12 for some reason, and never got through, didn't do anything. So I'm requesting again for at least, definitely we're all opposed from that change on Burnside from R15 to R10, and many of our neighbors are here tonight to oppose that. And also to request that change from R12 to R15 in that farm. That was never followed through. Nothing happened. I don't know why. Do you think there's anything that could be done about that? To put into the agenda to change that?
Well, the request from R15 from R10 was denied, just so everybody knows. That was denied. The subcommittee didn't take a look at rezoning other people's properties. It was noted in the minutes, but the subcommittee didn't feel that there was a need to rezone that.
It's sandwiched between R15, right?
I'm not exactly sure what piece you're talking about, but the subcommittee didn't see a need to upzone the R12 to the R15 for this, whatever piece you're talking about. I'm not familiar with the piece that you're talking about, but it was noted in the minutes, but the subcommittee didn't think to take from R12 to R15 for that particular piece of property. So I'm not, but this request from R15 to R10 was denied, so your neighborhood shouldn't,
Perhaps we could, in the presence, we're saying that the rest of the R15 should remain R15, not R10. Perhaps we can include that in our recommendation. That's what you're asking us?
Yes, that was initially a few months ago, and it was supposed to be looked at.
Does the R15 remain R15?
No, but the R12 was supposed to go to R15 to conform with the sandwich zone.
Again, it was noted in the minutes, but I don't know that the subcommittee wants to take somebody's property and change it from R12 to R15. I'm not, just like...
Why not? That's what the neighborhood is about. That's what it should be.
Please, we're having a conversation.
Just to clarify, was this a zoning board action? Somebody got a variance to?
Yeah.
No, it was just R12. For some reason, this large tract of land that's sandwiched between R15 all over is R12. And it doesn't conform to the neighborhood. So it doesn't make sense that it should be R12. It should actually be R15 like everything else. That's just, when you're rezoning neighborhoods, that's what makes sense. It should happen.
Again, I don't know if this was a zoning board thing or if this was something that was rezoned by the township committee.
It wasn't zoning, it was just zoning. So nothing will be done. I just think it's very important when, people take their time, they come to the proper channels and they make their requests. And like something like this, there are many neighbors that came by tonight, they're very concerned that an R10 will be devastating for our neighborhood, a change. These people, they don't live there, they're investors, they bought the land recently, they're well aware of the wetlands that exist. And for something to possibly slip in without anyone in the neighborhood getting any notice, without anyone in the neighborhood having any input in what occurs in our neighborhood is really not...
The request was denied. So that's it.
Okay.
It's over. It was denied. It was
Nothing in our neighborhood will be
The request from
rezoned.
this subcommittee the request that came into change this particular piece of property from R15 to R10 was denied by this subcommittee. So that's it.
Nothing in our neighborhood is going to be changed.
It says denied.
Okay.
So that's it.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Good evening, Moshe Linus Holland to Elmhurst. First of all, I want to say a very big thank you to the whole team up here and to the whole team here. I mean, this is really good. This is just great. I just have two questions. One, should this whole master plan get adopted and approved at all the upper levels by the township committee and get state plan endorsement and everything, what would happen to the last master plan? I mean, I know that a lot of the points from the previous master plans were reaffirmed by this master plan, but if there was something that was not reaffirmed, by this master plan of the previous master plans, would someone still be able to claim that master plan as a thing, or is that gone and now we're up to the new one?
So I think what you're asking is if there's a component of the 2007 master plan which is not reaffirmed by this advisory board, would somebody still be able to say, well, it was part of, if something was not reaffirmed by this advisory board, then that's out the window.
So then my next question is, there was a line on the master plan of 07 that spoke about housing. So you've heard that line repeated many, many times over the last 10 years. That there's this great need for housing and for all the you know what I'm talking about, right? For all the zoning that was done by the township, not all the housing needs have been met, because there's big housing growth in town. And that line has been used at many probably hundreds of planning and zoning boards to use that as a way, let's increase the density, or let's use smaller setbacks, sorry for this other, because of this line that's in the master plan of 07. So my question is just two parts. One is that line in the master plan of 2017? And two, if it's not, could that line still be used at the planning and zoning board, or is it gone? Because now we're the new town days.
So,
those are my two questions.
Okay, those are good questions. So, unless the planners want to chime on this also, what I'm going to say is that I know that there were certain recommendations in the 2007 master plan that were never adopted or implemented by the township committee. So, I think what you're saying is that over the years, planners have been using the 2007 master plan, although many components were not adopted, as
right, like by Route 88, all that should have been R7.
Right. So I think what you're saying is that in professional testimony given by planners before the planning and zoning boards, they've used the fact that something was recommended by the 2007 master plan, although it was never adopted, as the professional opinion as to why certain types of developments should be approved. Right? That's what you're saying. So. This master plan is saying that any recommendations that were adopted, and we should put this into the report, that any recommendations by this master plan advisory board have to be adopted and implemented by the township committee. So if they're not adopted or implemented, it's not going to preclude planners or from putting their professional opinion on the record, but it should be something that is taken into strong consideration by the planning and zoning boards, that if there were recommendations that were not adopted, they were probably not adopted for a reason. So, therefore, that should be in the report, that whatever recommendations this committee has should only be considered by the planning and zoning boards if they're actually adopted by the town. Not to say it doesn't preclude anybody from putting their professional opinion on the record. I mean, that may happen anyway, but there should be a strong recommendation.
Right, so in taking that note, I would point out that at the zoning board, as I've said in the last number of years, there have been many applicants who came forward through their engineers who said that, like along Route 88, that whole eastern corridor, the master plan recommended it to become R7.5 and it's still R10, and it was held up by the town, by the state, this and that. And and that part of the master plan of 07 was never adopted by the township. So I'm just pointing out, because that has clogged up the zoning board for so long, and so many people are trying to use that same thing. I would just recommend to this whole board, don't make any recommendations in this master plan that you think might not be approved. Because if it's not approved by the township committee, then your zoning board will be clogged up by all the people coming and saying, well, it was recommended even though it wasn't approved. Okay?
I just, before, I saw Stan wanting to weigh in on Chuck.
Well, I mean, I think every case before the zoning board is taken on its own merits, but I think that if the planning board, when it ultimately adopts the master plan, if the planning board does not include a recommendation that was in the 2007 master plan, that if an applicant comes before the board, because there was a very recent action by the planning board establishing the land use policy of the township, that they would be facing a pretty significant burden, not it doesn't knock it out of the park completely, but a significant burden to prove that they meet the positive criteria for their application as well as the negative criteria.
Right.
Now, one caveat to that, obviously there may be recommendations that were in the 2007 master plan that might be reaffirmed by the planning board when it's adopted. So that's why I think it's very important for you to continue to be active and involved and make sure that your voice is heard before the full planning board.
So just to go back on that question that I asked about that line, do you know if that line is in the master plan recommendations now about the need for housing?
I understand what you're referencing, Mr. Zinas, because we do seem to hear the same testimony regarding references to the old master plan before the planning, when we have applicants before the planning board. I think regardless of the verbiage used in the new master plan, there will likely be some reference to anticipated population growth and the continued need for housing. The catchphrase may be different, so to say, but I would imagine that the new master plan, having seen the density subcommittee's report today, will still have some sort of reference to the continued need for housing.
Sure, because you heard over the last few months from many sides of the community, as you heard from Mayor Culver, one community, you're hearing from half the people who come, or even more than half the people who come, that there isn't any additional need for housing. You're hearing for a smaller part of this same single community that there is, still additional need for housing. So how are you balancing that in the report by saying what you just said?
I would defer to T&M on how housing needs are anticipated and measured and why they feel there's a continued need for additional housing, whereas some members of the public disagree.
Yeah, I think what's important is that everybody understands that Lakewood is continuing to grow in population, and there is going to be a need for housing. The real question, and I think the fundamental question everybody's concerned about, is finding the appropriate location for that housing, and at the same time preserving the character of existing neighborhoods and preserving open space. That's the balance that the master plan will need to make. So to say that there will not be a need for housing and then we don't need one more additional residential housing unit, that's not practical or realistic, or it certainly doesn't serve the needs of the community. What is important is finding the right location. So all those issues that we were hearing about in terms of traffic, that providing sidewalks, providing opportunities to walk in a safe manner are addressed. So that's the challenge that this committee and then ultimately the planning board is going to be facing in crafting an appropriate master plan.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I just wanted there are a couple seats still in the front if anybody wants to, if anybody leaning on the wall in the back wants to join us. I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Carol Newman, and I live at 1084B Argyle Circle in Lakewood. Number one, before you consider housing, as somebody said before you consider housing, like somebody said before, you must take care of the infrastructure. We have horrible roads here. You can't even traverse them. It took us forever to get here. And that's not a benefit to the community. This SMART group is supposed to benefit the population of Lakewood. You're adding schools, more schools in Lakewood. Half of the religious private schools in Lakewood are not accredited. In the state of New Jersey, as in other states, a child up until the age of 16 is required to get an education that's on par with that offered by the public school system. Half of the schools here do not offer that kind of education. Matter of fact, if they complete 12 years of education and want to go on to college, they must secure a diploma elsewhere, get a GED. This is unconscionable. This is the future generation of our country, and they are not getting a proper education. And now you are adding more schools, more little schools that do not properly educate our children. That's unconscionable. This should go on. What are you going to do about this? Don't you believe that your children are entitled to an education? I come from an Orthodox Jewish family, and my family believed in educating our children. Why don't some of you? You let your children go to school where only Yiddish is spoken, and they only get an education, especially the boys' school, up until the 3rd grade? What kind of schools will you be adding? Thank you. I'd like an answer to that. I would like an answer to that. Because children are entitled to an education. Would somebody answer that question?
I'd like to talk to you. First, I want to know why you're screaming at me.
What?
Why are you screaming at me?
Because they said I wasn't talking
We asked you
loud
to shout
enough.
so they could hear.
You were screaming at us. Now then,
It's very, excuse me, I'm not doing it. It's very, very upsetting.
I agree, it's upsetting, but you really need to get your facts straight. There are boys and girls that are being very, very, very educated in this town.
Yes, half of the
That are very
schools.
smart, not half, don't make.
Oh,
don't
yes,
let it
I
say.
know
It
that's
is
true.
not half.
Oh,
It's
you're
not
wrong.
like what you said, that the kids are going to learn Yiddish and Hebrew or whatever else that you might may have said. It is not correct.
Oh,
And you should
really?
really check your facts before.
Oh, I
Not
did check
fair
my
to say
facts,
that.
and I know my
You obviously
facts.
did not. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else would like to answer that question?
I want to say that I also come from an Orthodox family that values education, and I got a good education through 12 years of regular school, and any school that's providing a 12-year education, those kids do not have to go for GEDs. It's only instances where kids do not complete 12th grades in a formal school that they have to go for GEDs. Again,
That is
I'll
not
just echo what
true.
Mr. Heisman said, if you, wherever you got your information about kids stopping their education in the 3rd grade and so on, it's just not
Just like the
accurate.
Shy
And
School lets everybody in.
Let's stay on the.
Oh, please, that is,
Is it possible not to suffocate us, a little bit here?
What was this building built
This group is not going to answer your question.
no, they're not going to answer my question, and they say that I'm not telling the truth, but I am telling the truth.
I want to make this short and sharp. You have a degree?
Yes, do you?
Yeah?
Okay, congratulations.
Same one, probably.
Hasn't slowed you down.
I'm just curious. I didn't know we were at a Board of Ed meeting. I thought we were at a... Okay, I just want to address to the planner over here. Are you both planners?
Yes.
Okay. You mentioned that the town has to grow. And if towns have to grow, I just want to know, maybe you want to go visit Howell, Jackson, Tom's River, and educate them on how they have to grow as well, because they're not growing. They're at a 1% growth rate. So there's a reason they're at a 1% growth rate, and the reason is because the more a town grows, the higher your taxes go up. And that is what our town is experiencing. Our taxes, I don't know, I don't know who hired you, I don't know what they told you before they hired you, what they expected from you. You call yourself planners, I call you, I can't say the word, but it's the oldest profession in the book. That's what I would call you. Yeah, the oldest profession. I just want to know, why is it so important to grow? Do you know the background of Lakewood? Do you understand that people, they move from their small houses to a bigger house, they eventually retire, they move to Florida, they move into senior housing, people die, kids are born, they get married, that's the cycle of life, right? And most towns can handle the amount of growth that they have, and don't tell me that, Jews are having so many children that we need to build so many houses. And if you tell me it's because of our growth, our natural growth, explain to me why there's so many ads in all the Jewish magazines literally begging people in every language to move to Lakewood, telling them that they can sell their home in Brooklyn, and it says in Yiddish, it says, why live in Brooklyn where you don't have grass? You can move to Lakewood where you'll have a little grass, and yes, the taxes might be high, but you can rent out your apartment, or you can rent out 2 basement apartments, or you can rent out your attic eventually, and you can make enough money to pay for everything. And come here, and there's wonderful schools here, and if it just so happens to be that your child with special needs can't get services in New York, you could come to Lakewood and get your special needs paid for by these wonderful folks right over here, right? So, if you have, I don't know which online university you got your planning degree from, but I don't know if they taught you that part of planning is not to hurt the people that are already here. We are not opening up a welcome mat for everybody from Brooklyn and Muncie, wherever they're sick of living, to come to Lakewood, and then they realize you're not even doing them a favor, because after they move here and they try to get down Route 9, they realize they don't want to live here either. So, we're not doing anything, so let's stop this stupidity. I appreciate everybody trying to, explain that our infrastructure has to grow in order before we build, and some people say, oh, we're eventually going to be 200,000. No, we don't have to be 200,000 people. It doesn't have to be this way. We can stop now, we can fix what we have. First of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Heineman, who chaired the downtown committee. Some of his ideas were actually good. Some of them were awful, but some of them were actually really good. And I think with his ideas, we can make a beautiful downtown, we can have a city center. If we ever need housing for new couples that are getting married, we don't have housing, we could build some decent apartment buildings that are close to transportation, that are close to shopping, that are close to schools, okay? Everybody's complaining that we keep opening schools. Schools are needed. You can't complain that we're opening schools if you're allowing housing. We need schools. Kids need to go to school. But if you want to curb that, you want to stop that, you have to stop the housing. I'm sure you guys have, I'm sure you really know how to plan a town. And you know what this town needs. You know what this town needs, but you were told what to say. And again, that's what disgusts me, and that's why, I'd like to see you be real planners, okay? And you're not Robert Moses. You're not going to be building highways above, you know what Robert Moses is, I assume, right? You're not going to be building highways and exits off of Route 9. I mean, everyone's coming up with great ideas. Let's build a bridge across the lake. Let's build a tunnel down Route 9. Let's build, I mean, listen, all this might be nothing soon anyway because we're going to have flying cars, right? So let's just stop all this. Let's stop the madness. Let's stop this. The seniors are worried about themselves, and rightfully so. Everyone cares about themselves. Mr. Heineman is worried about the downtown, rightfully so. He put his life in he has a wonderful business in the downtown. I don't know what you guys care about. But I care about my business that I put 17 years, I slaved and worked really hard to build a store that I wanted Lakewood to be proud of. I did it in Lakewood because I love Lakewood. I love my town. Loved my town. And now I'm at a point where I just want to be done with it. I want to leave. And I'm just asking you, if you are going to implement all these changes, I have one favor. This is going to be for myself. Can you please change the 14th Street area to the highest density possible? Because I just want to build some monstrosity and get out.
Hi, I'm Pauline Sharetta from 33 Oakmont Road in the Fairways. And by the way, Robert Moses never did what he was supposed to do. It went kaput on the Belt Parkway. He was supposed to build, and he didn't. My favorite word right now would be, I guess, moratorium. I come from an area that everybody in the Orthodox community is familiar with, Borough Park. I lived there over 60 years. When I was a child, there was farms all over the place. They started building houses. Wonderful. 2-story homes. Everybody had a space for a car. Everybody was happy. And then a couple of years ago, it got to the point where there was no more room, so they started building up. They extended 3rd stories, 4th stories, whatever, basements, apartments. And then all of a sudden, you can't get out. I would take about 6 to 7 lights to get out of my block. Unacceptable. You're talking about busing, with schools. The buses at 3 o'clock will have the town standing still until everybody is home. And then the problem with the busing is not everybody gets on the same bus. First you get the busing, will get the boys and bring them home. Then from the same family, you get the girls and bring them home. Then you go and get the school children from the public schools and bring them home. The streets are congested with buses all the time. Building in excess is not good for anybody. People that lived in my neighborhood, we called it Cement City. We called it Cement City because it became all cement, no grass, no quality of life. People moved out of there and came to Lakewood. It's a beautiful way to live. It's a historic town. And yet, it's being ruined because people are advertising, coming here, thinking that this is the life for them, but they're being selfish to the seniors that moved here. We did that, where we lived amongst everybody, the children running in the streets, the buses, the cars. We did all that. Now we wanted to move to this area in a senior community that is restricted with age. It's perfect for us, and you want to ruin it. You want to ruin it by allowing in our golf course buildings that are going to be, it's going to make the neighborhood so crazy. I thought we were zoned to have only single-family homes. Who has changed the zoning? Has it been changed? I don't know.
Not yet.
Now, my other thing that I wanted to say, this is nonsense, but it's bothering me. Every time I passed on Massachusetts Avenue and I saw where the school was, I understand because I called the Department of Human Works. That's what it's called, I think. And I was told that that was leased property by the school, and the town was taking it down. But who was taking it down? Was that my tax dollars? I was a landlord in Brooklyn. When I had a tenant that damaged my property, that tenant was responsible for cleaning up the property. Not that I'm going to pay my taxes now to somebody else who made a mess that I got to clean up their mess. Not fair. That's what I want. But anybody have an answer? Who's paying for it? Is it my tax dollars?
We are not the township committee.
I mentioned it, I don't know why I mentioned it, but anyway, but that's my story.
I came here to listen, but I can't just listen and not say anything. First of all, I'd like to say I do agree with Mr. Robertson that property.
Please, everybody had an opportunity to speak.
The mic is right here in front of me.
Speak clearly into the mic,
Okay.
everybody.
So,
planning board speaks into the mic.
so the property on Massachusetts Avenue, a substation.
What is everything, so everybody knows.
Brian Flannery.
What do you do for a living?
Where do you live? And now, I wasn't disrespectful to them.
Well, we told it like it is.
You told.
Please let him talk. Everybody else had an opportunity to talk. I said at the beginning that we give everybody that wants to speak an opportunity. So let's give an opportunity.
Let us speak.
So since I found one item to agree with Mr. Robertson on, I wanted to bring it out. It's a good location for it. I thought I was going to come and hear the subcommittee reports. They were going to go to the planning board, that's what I heard. And then I hear people get up saying things and I just can't sit in my seat. First of all, it's a little piece of business. Everybody knows I wrote the letters. I'm Brian Flannery, who says the master plan says we need housing. Number 15, the neighbors came and said there's no reason to change that to R10, and I know you're not changing it. It was put down as denied. I know the process. I think most of the people in the room don't understand the process. They think that you're passing something that then becomes law, and they're taking out their frustrations on you. Your volunteers that sit there, and I know what it's like because I sat there 10 years ago and did it. I did not get near the abuse that you did. I don't know why you would take the abuse that you take, because if I was sitting up there and heard some of these disrespectful comments, I wouldn't sit there quietly. And Mr. Klein, I didn't speak when you were talking. It's really very rude. You think you're somebody special. You tape the meetings. Please be quiet. So at number 15, which was Burnside Avenue, there is a very good reason for that. And first of all, the property that's being requested is in the sewer service area. There's environmentally sensitive properties near it. It's a C1 stream. So what's going to happen is that's going to develop as 15,000 square foot lots on septic systems, or it's going to develop as smaller lots on public sewer. And when you're near an environmentally sensitive area, it certainly is a benefit to have public sewer rather than septic systems. You'll have a few extra units. They talk about the traffic issues and the safety issues. For a couple extra units, I think I'd rather see the environment protected. But I didn't think I was going to be getting into that. What I am getting into is I hear that it's unconscionable. And what I find unconscionable is the disrespect. The disrespect to this board, the disrespect to the planning board, the disrespect to me. The disrespect is to
Folks, please let him finish and move on. Let him finish and move on, just like we let everybody else finish when everybody had said whatever they wanted to say. For better or for worse, everybody had the opportunity. Let him finish, and we're going to move on like we did with everybody else. Thank you.
Stan Slahetka and T&M are one of the finest planners in the state. They have degrees in education, and when they talk about planning, they know what they're talking about. Other people can get up here with a friendly crowd and try to embarrass them and say disrespectful things, but that's wrong. They talk about greedy developers. Greedy developers. Because somebody has a different opinion than you, you call them names and call them things. Most developers they're doing a job and they're providing housing opportunities. There's bad developers, just like there's bad seniors. And I can talk about seniors because I am one. There's bad in every group. There were comments with respect to...
We're going to let him, please, I ask my neighbors, please, ask my neighbors to be respectful, please. This man has a right to speak. You may not agree with him, I may not agree with him, but please be respectful, please. Let everybody else finish. Just let him finish.
There were comments with respect to the values of the houses dropping, and there's information that proves that. If that's the case, when the planning board has their public hearings, the people have the right to present that. I've never seen property values in Lakewood drop. There's comments on the schools, and clearly we need schools. And to hear comments that there's some sort of a bad thing about providing special education needs for students, I can't imagine how somebody can utter that. If a family has a child that needs special needs, God bless them. My tax money has gone for that for years, and I'm happy to spend it more. And I do pay taxes in Lakewood, even though I moved out. I have property in Lakewood, and I'm happy for the taxes that go to special education and all education in general. I find it unbelievable and unconscionable that people can make comments like that. And I understand they feel their quality of life is changing and they're getting chased out. But the problem being traffic congestion needs money spent in order to fix the traffic problems. And I don't think anybody in this room or any of the taxpayers in Lakewood want their taxes to go up to pay for that. They want the greedy developers to pay for it. And the only way the developers are going to pay for that is if you let them build a few more houses and get it in. We make fun of the term smart growth. And it ends with equitable for all. Equitable for all doesn't mean what all the people in this room, it means all the people in Lakewood. And there's 100,000 people in Lakewood, and it has to be equitable for all of them, not just the people in this room. We talk about the quality of life the seniors expected when they moved in. Some of those developments have only been there 10 or 15 years. Anybody that went on the internet could see what Lakewood was. It was a growing community. You knew there was going to be growth. So as far as what can be expected, if you're disappointed, I'm sorry. That's what could have been expected from anybody who looked at it. When I moved in 1979, I thought I was going to stay here and be on an estate and be away from everybody.
Why did you move?
That didn't work out, so I moved. I had an option. I hear comments about the police and fire can't get to places, but I see right in the report that the response time from both the police and the fire is fabulous, and it's always been that way because Lakewood does do that, and that's why with Mr. Robertson's suggestion to have that substation there, it would continue to go that way. You know, I hear the comments about there's no further need for housing, and I just can't believe people can say that. There's comments that half of the people say they don't want it. Most of the people in this room say they don't want it. That's not half of the people in Lakewood. Thank you.
You don't live in here. You don't live in here.
Okay, let's move on.
Hello, can you hear me?
The microphone, please, everybody.
Can you hear me?
Just quiet down. Thank you.
I'm nobody, but I am somebody. And my name is Susan Bainey from 167 Skyline Fairways. I'm speaking for all the seniors that live in Lakewood, all the senior homes. We pay a lot of taxes to defend this town. And what do I want to say? Oh, wait a minute. I'm thinking. Just a minute. Oh, darn it. That last man got me all upset. What did I want to say? You know what I want to say.
You can take a seat right up front.
No, I want to say that we pay a lot of taxes for seniors, and thousands of letters have been sent to the EPA, to the planning, whatever, wherever the letters went. And you know at the final end, when the planning board is going to make the decision, keep us in mind of all these thousands of people that are against it. So, just remember us, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron Hirsch.
Speaking on the microphone.
Okay.
For some of you, got a shot tonight. Everybody's got a shot tonight.
Okay, so I wanted to start off with, the master plan is basically what is for the future of all of this town, not just some. So it basically, that's why we have public meetings, so we get input from the public. So we really need to try and remind everyone that this is what it's about. It's what the township wants, not just some people. So brings me on to my next point, why there are zone changes that were brought up that was not brought up in public. It was done through letters, behind the scenes. If you're proposing zone changes, the courts require it, because it's the law, you got to notify people that live there. Why are we doing zone changes without even discussing a public comment on that? There's been numerous zone changes that were requested, including, I heard tonight, for a highway change to include residential. My backyard was done illegally, the flea market. They changed it without any notice. Now I think this is to get a backdoor on that. Let me explain to you what happened. See, it happened, but then when they tried buying houses in my neighborhood, so instead of the cars going off onto Route 70, they're trying to put the cars into our neighborhood from 160 units. That's where everyone gets upset. Well, that's overkill. If you're going to develop a neighborhood off of Route 70 and all of a sudden, you change it, and now you're going to destroy another neighborhood, which was never a plan for a road over there? What's this all about? That's not fair. It's games and games and games just don't stop.
this mixed zone for highway has to change. It cannot just be put in, you really got public comment, don't just throw it in under the table, it's not fair to us. Last master plan called for infrastructure as well as lots of densities. Apparently, lots of density happened, infrastructure not just didn't happen, a lot of streets got vacated. We took a total 360 on that. We did one side, we went the opposite direction on the other. Really, this higher density is irresponsible, and yes, maybe your reports say that emergency vehicles get through quicker. They will go slower if you keep this up. There's no doubt. The more cars you're going to put on the road, the harder it's going to get. I have a neighbor of mine who had to go from Chestnut area to the fire station, I think it's James and Route 9. Took them one day 17 minutes to get to a fire truck. So it is becoming dangerous because they don't have sirens. They have blue lights. They can't always get to a fire in time. And the more traffic we're going to have, the worse, and it's our safety. That's really what it's about. So it's really what the people need, and we need to first consider safety. And we can't even talk about higher density before we even dealt with the infrastructure. First fix it, and then let's have the conversation about density. We can't even have that conversation before we fix the infrastructure. Now, I have another issue. I'm sure you're familiar. You've heard, for those of us that have gone to planning and zoning meetings, there's something that's called variances. When people try to get uses for land that's not really there, changing zones and stuff like that, I can't tell you how frustrating it is when someone comes to change a zone and they don't get it because all the neighbors are opposing it. They threaten them that they're going to throw a school on their block. That's not fair. You know, we really got to do something about that. It's really not fair. I would not want, I don't care who we are, if perhaps, I don't know, just an idea, something has to be done about perhaps if you apply for a variance and that, maybe you should have to wait a few years to apply for a school. Don't just like turn around and say, oh, you better give me that big. So what happens is people end up saying, just try not to do overkill on it. Just consider fair. I mean, I don't know anyone. We really have to start making common sense about that. We're a growing town. We have to really use common sense. That's all I'm asking for. Let's try to do it reasonable. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hetty Scott. I live in 5 Sandhurst at the Fairways. I just have a question or two about the school system. How can a private house turn into a school and they're paid for it? How many kids do they teach in there? And we're paying the tax on that property? It's not fair. Schools should be built, these kids should be able to go to public schools. Okay. The kids should be able to go to big schools and not in somebody's house with 5, 6, 7 boys or girls, whatever they have. And then their house is not taxable. I don't understand this. I come from up north. I lived for 33 years. We paid less taxes in my time up north than I paid down here. It's getting kind of funny. And so the response to that mayor before me, the other one who does not live in our town, how does he have to know to get up here and say we're disrespectful? We're not disrespectful, we're just voicing our opinions. And if you feel that you are disrespectful to you, I'm sorry about that, but that's it.
For the next speaker, I just want to say that we've been setting public comment for a little while now. Is there anybody else after the next speaker that wants to?
30 seconds.
Mr. Robinson?
30 seconds.
Okay, so I just ask that whoever else wants to, speak, just, come up to the front, make yourself known now, so we can start to,
Wrap it up.
wind down. Thank you.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Can the people who are speaking speak about the master plan and not mix us up with?
That would also be very nice. Thank you.
Boards or things like that.
But,
Motion to us, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Just speak to the mic.
Shout, you gotta shout.
Shout, scream.
Well,
Motion to us.
I can't handle any worse.
I expect you screaming after my speech. Thank you. I'm sitting here tonight, and I'm hearing how terrible it is to live in Lakewood, how bad the roads are, how bad the school system is, how we're regressing, and it's terrible, Lakewood. It's terrible. I want to talk about one word I think should be focused on. I hope when the planners write their recommendations are included, and that's opportunity. How great it is to live in Lakewood. If you look at Lakewood prior to 2007, last master plan, you look at people's education. Most of people in Lakewood sent to private schools. So let's talk, I think it's a ratio of 6 to 1 that sent private schools. So let's talk about private schools for a minute. Back in 2007, someone wanted to send to a private school. What were your options? A couple of schools. Today, we have so much opportunity. The people, the taxpayers, the bulk of the taxpayers, not some few isolated people living in the southwest corner of Lakewood. The bulk of the taxpayers want opportunity. They want different education opportunities for their children. Some has one kind of educational option, and we have that. And that we have with growth, with people, with leaders who see future, who plan for the future, who are proactive, and understand what we need to provide opportunity. Let's move on to recreational culture opportunity. What were the options prior to 2007 in Lakewood? Before the recommendations which built and created today's Lakewood. Someone wanted to go to eat out with the wife at night. I had opportunities. What do we have? Today you have so many nice opportunities. Moving on to shopping. Someone wanted to go shopping. Retail. So much about clothing. What was your opportunity back in 2005? You have to go up north to the mall. You have to go down. Today you have so much great opportunity in Lakewood. And last but not least, employment opportunity. Prior to 2007, what was the average starting salary in Lakewood? Today it's about approximately 25 to 30% more. So someone who's starting to build a family, a young couple who are looking to establish themselves financial independence, they now have opportunity, which was not available 10, 12 years ago. We're talking about 25 to 30% starting salary increase today over 10 years ago. So I ask you, when you make your recommendations, consider opportunity. Understand what provides opportunity, and please include that in your recommendations. Thank you.
Jim Campbell, and I'll be very short. I want to address Mr. Flannery's comment about seniors possibly being anti-special needs. Many of the seniors that I know are former educators, special ed teachers, special ed administrators, and we come to expect great public education and non-public. We've all experienced both. The problem with special ed is not only its cost, it's hearing that we're advertising in New York papers to bring people here with their special needs. We expect 10 to 20%, and the average is like 12 or 13% special needs students. But if you're going to advertise for them and say, we have the greatest programs, we're going to have more than our normal percentage. So that's really, if there's been any complaint about special ed, it's been along those lines. It's not special ed in general. There's an educated group, most people. Okay, we put our kids to school. Our grandchildren are going to school now. We support schools. Is there anybody that does not support public or non-public schools? No. And we want everyone to get a good education, because that's going to help us sell our home someday, and you'll sell your home too. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is
Hold on a second.
Jim Campbell.
Jim. And everyone else, I just want to debunk a myth. I don't know, I'm not aware of any of these advertisements. I just asked the guy next to me about any advertisements that are welcoming everyone, especially for the special ed. So just so you are aware, if there is such a thing, it's not something that I know. My parents live in New York, they've never seen it. And my in-laws live there as well, they haven't moved there yet. So there isn't such a thing that we are aware of. Definitely not in a large format.
Hi, my name is Gershon Silver. I would like to say a few words. I would like to suggest that a few things should be implemented whenever there is going to be development. Number one, whenever somebody develops a property, the way it used to be when Lakewood was a small town, like every small town, that they used to make the drainage, that the gutters go in between two properties. But whenever it is 10 feet apart between a house and another house in the development, they still put it in the middle instead of putting the drainage in the back. What happens up happening that the basement apartments are flooded. I think that by now that we have new construction all the time, I think this should be implemented, that the builders should have to put drainage in the back, so the basement apartments will not be flooded, and all the gutter waters go into the drainage in the back. Number two, I also like to recommend that every time they make a new development, the entrance to development should be repaved before anybody moves into the development. Otherwise, the township will repave that road in 25 years later after development has been redone like it's so far around Lakewood. And number three, I'd like to also recommend that maybe we should change schools. School should not pop in every neighborhood, because what happens is every time the school pops up in the neighborhood, traffic congestion becomes worse. Like, for example, now they are building a school next to Bartanura, which is County Line Road. It's about to be more congested and more congested. I think that the school should be more together in one location compared to be all around town. That's all.
I'm trying to close it for him, so we can go home.
Howard Sepno, 59 Foxwood Road in the Fairways. Mr. Flannery spoke last week and said that 15 years ago he moved from Lakewood because of the traffic. During the last 15 years, actually we're going on 16 years now, I have been to many various township meetings where Mr. Flannery spoke in favor of high-density building. I could understand it. He made his living from that. I invite Mr. Flannery to move back to Lakewood today and live with the mess he helped create. About a year ago, some young gentlemen were standing up at various meetings and saying, you know, you seniors, you've experienced a lot of life. We should have listened to you the last time we did our master plan, because if we had listened to you, we wouldn't have this mess on our hands. For some reason, they've stopped coming to these meetings. Perhaps their children are now school-aged, and that quiets them down. Whatever it may be, we're not being disrespectful. We are frustrated. We are tired of going to meetings and being the great unheard. Yes, people sit there and listen, but it goes in one ear and out the other. Several years ago, our Hebrew Culture Club invited the Lakewood Township officials to a brunch, and it was very nice. Mr. Cole sat at our table, and so did Steve Reingert. And Ray said to me, Howie, you used to come to all of these meetings. How come I don't see you anymore? And I said, because I'm tired of being lied to. I can't accept it anymore. I would bring up a point, and somebody will say, we'll get back to you on that. I'm still waiting. Some of those meetings go back 12 years, 11 years. It's unfortunate that the seniors, who do contribute a lot in taxes, feel unwelcome in their own town.
I think I might be able to close this.
There's actually, another speaker that might be close.
I'm trying, Justin.
Yes, Jerry Ballwitz. It was quoted that part of the definition of smart growth was open space. There is an open space already on Cross Street called the golf course, which is also a rateable. I'm wondering if anybody on this committee is going to be brave enough to say, let us remove that recommendation regarding planned communities. Will anybody be brave enough to do that?
I guess you might be able to close it out.
I think it's fair for me to say, regardless of the opinions, thank you for listening. Having spent almost my entire career in public service, there is some truth to saying that no good deed goes unpunished, and we do thank you. Okay. Two very important technical points that I was asked to mention pertaining to potential recommendations. One is there was no, to my knowledge, no mention of the former Lakewood Municipal Landfill. We all know that that was leased for 99 years at $20,000 per year, and that it must remain a golf course, not shall, must remain a golf course for 30 years after the end of the environmental testing, which is for the most part methane gas release testing. That testing is continuing beyond the anticipated end date because the methane gas readings were high. As we think about children's safety, do we as a community want any child living in a development remotely close to methane gas releases? I would hope the answer uniformly would be absolutely not. Okay. And I think that point needs to be made in the course of the planning, that there are some significant environmental issues that need to be highlighted. I was going to use the word exposed, but I'm not sure that's the right word. The last point is Allie Morris is absolutely correct that Judge Marlene Ford did declare the R40B ordinance null and void. That case is far from over. In researching that case, and this is for the benefit of everyone in this room, the plaintiffs were not residents of Lakewood. They were residents of Toms River. I anticipate that that case will be reopened for further consideration with the support of the township. So if there's going to be the footnote that it was declared null and void, which is an accurate statement, there should be a second sentence that the issue remains open. Thank you much for all your great work.
I think that pretty much wraps up our program for the evening. I want to thank everybody for coming out, not only to this meeting, but to the previous meetings that we've had. We do appreciate everybody's comments, and I also want to thank the advisory board members for all the hard work that they've done over the last year. It's been a long process. Many people have spent many hours in putting together this re-examination report. And I want to thank all the members of the advisory board and all the subcommittees. I want to thank Martin Stan and everybody else in the Associates also for all the hard work that they've done on this.